All right, welcome to the Greg Ryder Show. And on today's episode, we're talking with Sarah Richards. And she has just an incredible story of, starting out east in Nova Scotia, making her way out to Alberta. And she's a singer-songwriter that's done an EP. She's sitting on an album right now. And she talks all about her story about the plan that she had before pandemic and wanting to release music, and then God having a different plan that told her to reset, to slow down, and to really kind of just work on what season she's in. So she's going to talk about just her journey with God, quitting drinking a year ago, everything she's learned about herself, and just what's to come with Sarah Richards. So get ready for this episode. It's going to get you thinking. It's going to get you to really kind of trust where you are in your life. And I think you're going to take a lot away from this episode. So let's go. All right, so welcome to the Greg Ryder Show, and on today's episode, we are talking to Sarah Richards. She has been here in Strathmore for 7 years, and she moved from up in northern Alberta. So welcome to the show, Sarah. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm doing very good. Yes, absolutely. So you've been in Strathmore for 7 years. Where did you originally come from?
So I was born in Nova Scotia.
Okay.
So, and I've also lived in Ontario, but I've lived in Alberta most of my life.
Awesome. Whereabouts in Ontario?
Elliott Lake, so up north.
Elliott Lake.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm originally from Ontario. I'm
Where?
from down in southern Ontario, just a Hamilton. Just
That's where my dad was born.
Really?
Hamilton, yeah.
Hamilton. It's so funny when you say Hamilton out here, people are like, almost like they're like, I'm like, hi, I'm from Hamilton. They're like, hey, don't diss Hamilton. That's a blue collar town. 'Cause this is like such a blue collar province. Like they respect Hamilton's like workforce, but like kind of growing up there, it was just kind of like I always had a different opinion of what Hamilton was to me. But yeah, no, I grew up there and always ran away from Ontario, but found my way out to Alberta.
Nice.
Yeah. So Alberta, when did you move out to Alberta?
When I was 5.
Okay. When you were 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom graduated university and she was a teacher, and so they're like, oh, we're going to ship you out to northern Alberta and you can teach up there. So that's where I grew up mostly.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
And so growing up, what was it like growing up in northern Alberta?
It was an experience. So the first town we lived in was La Crete, which is a purely Mennonite community.
Okay.
I was the only girl in my kindergarten class that wore pants. They were all very Mennonite, dress-wearing, German-speaking. So I was also the only one that spoke English. So it was kind of tough.
Wow.
But we did make friends, and that's kind of what we do everywhere we go. Just make friends, and then we moved to Rainbow Lake, which is even more north, and lived there for a bit in Oil Patch Town.
Okay.
Then Dawson Creek, and then Fairview, and we lived there for quite a few years.
Awesome. Okay, so Fairview, Alberta, and what would be like the major city close to that?
Grand Prairie.
Okay, up there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are you're a singer-songwriter. You're in a family business, which we'll talk about now. So if you were to define your genre, like what would you say you like to sing? What kind of music influenced you growing up?
So my big brother, he's also a musician, and he always had his buddies over playing music, and 90s alternative, which was my go-to music. So I'm kind of an alternative singer, but my mom was kind of folk country, so I have some of those roots as well. Blues. My dad plays the harmonica. So there's like a huge mix of different kinds of music in my sound. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And we were talking just before the show. You did an EP, and now you're kind of sitting on an album right now.
Yeah.
And what do you like to write about? Like, where do you get a lot of your inspiration from? Where do you pull from?
Most of my music is life experience, and I write mostly to just share my story because people relate to that kind of stuff. And a lot of it is pulling from pain or hurt and kind of a story lesson about how to overcome those things in a positive way.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, right? I think music, that's what I feel is, music nowadays is storytelling, and it's trying to, how can you, like, I had a conversation with kind of a mentor of mine today where he was telling me about, like, I'm so concerned about, writing these songs like that are, you're so focused on like writing this one song and saving up this one song, but it's just like, do I really want to take the mainstream route where it's like, you're trying to work so hard on this one song, but it's just like, usually those songs aren't as deep as like the ones that you write alone in your room when you're going through a heartache, or you're going through a tough time. Like, those are the songs that like really grab people's attention. And he was like, man, I think you got to stop worrying about going the mainstream. Like, you got to just keep writing.
Yeah. And
just keep writing songs. And like, I feel people are going to start to develop who you are as a songwriter as you continue to write. And I just feel like that's the kind of way I kind of see music. Do you kind of agree with that?
Oh yeah, totally. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think that's what's missing, right? Is like people are just chasing this clout, and they think that like they have to have this major radio hit for them to feel successful, or them to feel like they're actually worth. But like, when you do music, like what are your goals for music? What do you want to be as an artist, or what do you want to be known for?
I just want to help people. I just want people to be able to relate to me. And I think that's the purpose of the trials we go through, is to bring us growth and maturity. And a lot of people, they see trials as something that's awful and terrible, but if we can see them from a different perspective, then we'll be able to walk through them in confidence. And so that's kind of what I want to do, because songwriting, there's just something so much deeper, like you were saying about it. There's just something that it can hold people, it can move people, and that's why it's so important.
What's your favorite part about songwriting and just in performing?
So for example, I was playing a show in Calgary at the Gravity Cafe one time, and I wrote this song called Child, and it was actually like, I had wrote it for my husband, but this lady listened to this song, and she came up to me and she was crying, and she said, "This song is about children with autism." She said, she's like, "You need to get this song out there so that people can understand." It's like looking into the heart of a child with autism. She's like, "This is insane." And so that's my favorite thing, is like, my experience may touch on somebody's life that's completely different, like not what I was trying to say to them that I went through, but something that they've gone through. It touches them in different ways. So that's kind of my favorite thing.
That's cool. So it's almost like it's your intention for the song. Like, and I think that's so important. Like, you write your story, and like, it's not going to be anything alike, someone else's story, but they can grab something from that kind of makes them just think about their life, or kind of, it helps resonate with them.
Yeah.
That's a really cool feeling. And so for music, like, you have this album that you're sitting on, and like, obviously you told me that, COVID, like, what did the pandemic, like, obviously, where were you in your music? You said you kind of had a plan of how you wanted to release this album before COVID and the pandemic. Tell me how that changed kind of throughout that.
Yeah. So I went down to Nashville and recorded this album, and I was super excited about it. And I released a couple songs, and they didn't really, like, I didn't have a whole marketing crew and stuff like that. So it wasn't really, I wasn't ready for it. So then I decided I was just going to take some time and get my stuff all together. And so then in the spring, right before COVID happened, I was planning on doing a whole tour with the album and getting everything together. And then COVID happened and I started working full time at the body shop, and my music was just pretty much completely put on hold because I was working full time. I started out detailing there, so it was just like very, very difficult job. And so I didn't even play music at all for months and months. But it was definitely a learning experience. Everything happens for a reason, I think. So for that to not go forward, working at this place, I've just learned so much about myself that if I would have went ahead with that, I don't think I would have been ready. Mm. And so now this is one of my first opportunities to kind of talk to another musician. It's been a long time, so I'm appreciative. Yeah. And I'm kind of ready. I've learned a lot, and I'm going to start stepping forward now. So.
And kind of, I'd love you to elaborate kind of some things you learned about, running a family business. Like you've been here in Strathmore. How long has the business been running here in Strathmore?
So my mother-in-law worked there before she bought it, and she bought it in 2014.
2014. Yeah. And the name of it?
Driver's Collision.
Driver's Collision. Yeah. And so, working a family business and being away from the music, how did, obviously, looking back on it now, you can see what you learned, but how was that kind of going through with it? Like, were there times when you thought maybe you'd never go back to music? Like take me through kind of your mind back then.
Yeah, it was like, why, God? What is, like, I had this plan, and I just, like, I thought that life was going to go a certain way, but you had a different plan for me. So, like, to be honest, I felt angry, like, I'm like, how did this even happen? Like, I put so much time and effort and work into all this stuff, and it's just completely stopped. And so for a time, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. I guess that wasn't my calling or whatever. But through the working for a family business and estimating, and it's given me a confidence because, like, I never estimated before, and now I'm doing, like, a pretty good job at it. So I didn't know that I could do something other than music. Like, and just building our family dynamics and relationships. And actually one of the major accomplishments is working full time with my husband. Mm. That's been, it's had its ups and downs, that's for sure. But we've come through so much. And I think that's another major step forward, is our relationship is so much more solid now that I don't know if we could have handled me moving forward in music. So
I love that you touched on, God and, God having a plan, and, obviously being a new Christian, this year, I think for me, it was like when I was doing music, it was always about myself. It was like, what can I do to get ahead? What can I do? I got to get this song. I got to go meet this guy. I got to go here. I got to go there. I got to play these shows. And it's just like, it's a little bit, my story is like November 27th was the last time I played in Nashville. And like, I was full time down on Broadway 6 nights a week, just playing music, like full time for 2 years. Wow. And I just walked away from it that night. Like, I just remember looking out in the audience, and it's like this feeling hit me where I was just like empty. Mm-hmm. I was just like, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the people just like wanting me to play, all the cover songs and, play Toby Keith, play this. And I'm just like, I'm tired of this. Like, it hit me in that moment. And it was so weird because I bought a t-shirt from that bar right before I played on that show. Mm-hmm. Like, I was walking past the gift shop, and I would never have bought a show from the bar I was playing, but I randomly bought a shirt, and then I never went back. And then I went back in 2008 for Christmas, and I remember getting home, and this massive wave of emotion came over me. And I just remember being like feeling so burnt out and tired, and like just the mental health, and I just been neglecting that for so long that I was like, my mom was like, hey, when are you booking your trip back to Nashville? And I was like, I don't think I'm going. And she's like, you're not going back to Nashville? I was like, no. And like that decision weighed so heavily on me, because I'm like, everyone's going to think I failed. Everyone's going to think Nashville's too hard. It kicked me out. And, but I had to take care of myself, because like, if I maybe got a little bigger down there and I started maybe touring on bigger shows, I would have ruined it. I would have pissed it away. I would have screwed it up somehow.
Yeah.
So I came home at a time and I walked away from it. But and that's, now that I have God in my life, it's just like trusting that that was all part of the plan. And he put me on a school tour across Canada about 4 or 5 months after I came home from Nashville. Mm-hmm. And I traveled across Canada speaking at high schools and performing. And I got to talk to them about mental health. And
wow.
I got to share my story with over 30,000 students about hope and resiliency. And I went on that trip thinking that, this is my chance to really spread my name across the country. And I realized that's not what it's about. It was the private conversations I had behind the bleachers with a 16-year-old guy that told me that today, he wasn't going to show up today. He wasn't going to show up to school because of what is going on in his home. And he's like, I just came and I heard your music and now I want to change my life.
Wow.
And it's God had this plan for me, and it was a Christian organization.
Yeah.
But I never knew that.
Oh, no way.
So I went on the road thinking that I'm just going on a high school tour with a public school system. And then I quickly found out that we started staying at Christian homes and we started staying in churches.
Yeah.
And then I finally asked them, I was like, is this a Christian organization? And they're like, well, no, we used to be a Christian organization, but we started to theme it as public so we could get into the public school system.
Wow.
And I was like, you
Sneaky.
clever, you clever. And then
That's awesome.
I started hanging out with more Christians, and I just started to really kind of get into that whole life. And I realized that there's something about Christians that I never could understand before. It's the patience. Is that Christians have this sense of calmness about them, that they have someone that can help them push them through some really tough waves.
Yeah.
And I was I never had that. It was always a one-man island and pushing me through, and if I don't help myself through this, I'm not going to get through it. Mm-hmm. And I think that was just where a lot of my mental health came from, is I'd put myself under so much pressure.
That is.
And I would just lay in bed for days on end. I wouldn't open the windows. I wouldn't and I just would sit there and worry and be depressed.
Yeah.
And it was, it's very hard, and obviously, you believing in God, and now you tell me that you're sober for a year. Talk to me about that. How did that decision come to be? All right, I just want to pause this conversation quickly just to talk about one of our dear sponsors, Rocket Grid Marketing. They are an incredible Alberta-based digital marketing company, and they focus on growing brands. They focus on hitting business goal needs and whatever your business may need to take you to the next level. So if you want to check out more about what they do, head to rocketgrid.ca and see what they do.
Well, I didn't drink heavily, but I used alcohol as a crutch. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to rely on God for that. So, and then my husband as well, he also made the decision. So when we made that decision together, it made it a lot easier to do. And it's kind of tough. I used to drink quite a bit of wine here and there, not to get drunk. So I wouldn't say that I had a problem, but sometimes in life there's things that you just know that you need to give up in order to move forward. And that was one of those things. I just, I was like, we're heading towards specifically being influential in children's lives and teenagers and stuff like that. And I'm like, if I'm drinking and they see that, it doesn't matter if I'm only having one glass of wine, they might think, oh, well, she drinks, so I can, And so, and then that's what a lot of people use for their crutches, for their mental health. And so I don't want to be that kind of person, I just want to be clean and clear of all that stuff. And so I can be completely transparent.
I love that. And I think, being the role model is when I was on that school tour, it was I was still drinking and I was still smoking. And I still remember I would talk about these stories on stage about like pushing through. And then later that night, I would be sneaking beers. I'd go to a bar for a quick beer, and I'd have a cigarette outside. And I felt like such a phony. I felt like I'm telling them one thing, and then I'm doing this totally thing but behind. And it's just like, I just didn't feel like I was cohesive with like the life that I'm trying to portray. Like if I'm not doing it myself, like how can I tell other people to do that? Like how can I tell people to, to take care of their mental health and like look at their alcohol consumption and look at like the food they're putting in their bodies if I'm just doing the opposite?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it is absolutely a journey. And I think, quitting alcohol for me, like it's coming up on 2 years in October.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's like I quit thinking that it was going to be I just needed a break. And I bought this really expensive bottle of champagne, and I said, I'm not going to crack this until some big milestone. I'm like, some milestone in my music. Yeah. I'm going to finally open that. But that bottle has since blown up. I left it in the truck. And so I don't have a champagne bottle anymore. So I'm pretty sure that's God saying, hey, listen, you're not opening that bottle, by the way. We've already taken this out of the equation.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, it started as a small time thing. And I was like, maybe I'll hit this goal in 3 months. 3 months didn't hit. Oh, can't open the champagne bottle yet. Then 6 months, and then 9 months. And October 12th is my day. And last year I did a 12-hour walk around Strathmore. I just got up one morning. I heard about this thing called the 12-hour walk.
What?
And yeah, I want to do an annual thing. I want to do like on October 12th, I'd love to like, bring in the community and help do like a walk for addiction and raise money for mental health.
That's awesome.
And I just walked around Strathmore for 12 hours, and I think I hit like 52 kilometers. And just like, I just kept walking, and like no music. I just walked, and like,
oh wow,
that was my 1 year date. And I think I didn't even feel like I quit drinking. I thought I was eventually going to go back one day.
Yeah.
But when I hit that 1 year mark, I think it changed everything for me. So have you surpassed 1 year? Or are you coming up on 1 year?
I think it's August 28th.
That's your 1 year?
Yeah. So
you doing something big for it?
We haven't really planned anything big.
That's awesome.
No, just.
And how has your life just improved since taking a step back from it?
Well, yeah, I've matured a lot, for sure. Because when you're leaning on something to help you like that, I wouldn't say that it's a weakness, but it's not you being able to overcome that, I would say. So it's like I've proven to myself that I don't need that to be happy.
Yeah.
And to have fun and to socialize. Because I know a lot of people use it because they're like, I'm introverted. I don't. So it's hard to go out in groups of people or on stage without having had a couple drinks to warm me up or whatever. So I've been able to prove to myself that I don't need that,
Isn't it crazy when like my favorite thing is when someone offers you a drink at a bar and like you just kindly say, "No, I'm good."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Wait, what? You're good? What do you mean you're good? Have you had too much tonight?" It's like, "No, I don't drink." It's like, it's just like early on, it was like this feeling that came over you was like a superpower. It was like, wait a minute, you can be in this busy bar and you could be hanging out, you have a smile on your face, and you're not drinking. And it was like that was always such a huge win for me. And it was just like you could just walk away. Like I went to the Alberta Country Music Awards.
Oh, nice.
And everyone was partying in the lobby till about 4 a.m. And me and my friend Josh, he didn't drink that night, and I wasn't drinking. And we were just hanging out with people all night, singing music. Like people were standing on tables, having fun, trying to offer us drinks. And then we all of a sudden just got up and we're like, all right, we're going to drive back to Calgary because it was in Red Deer.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're just going to go drive back. And they're like, what are you talking? You guys have been drinking all night. We're like, no, we don't drink. And they're like, wait a minute, you've been playing your guitar, standing on the table, smiling, laughing, looking like you were just drinking all night and you haven't had a drop? And I'm like, nah, dude, that's just me.
That's awesome.
They're like, man, that's nuts. And I think it really like put people into perspective. They're like, he can, yeah. And I just feel like it shows people that it's possible when like you can be out in public and be happy and doing your thing and you're sober.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah,
That's awesome.
It's crazy. It's such a crazy, and I think the whole world, like the pandemic was, you know, the amount of things that as musicians and creatives it did for us, like it really cut a lot of our careers off at the knees, because I always say to people, like, if you were not above the cusp before the pandemic, it was very hard to like survive that, because like, you know, I was riding momentum. I was coming home from Nashville. I was coming off this school tour. And the month I got home, it was like hit March 2020.
Shut down.
And like, I had no plan. I was like so confused. I went back to landscaping for $18 an hour.
Oh, wow.
And I was just doing entry-level landscaping. I was cutting grasses. I was 28 years old, living back in my hometown. I was like, what is going on? And I didn't have God to lean on that point. Like, it was just like so many nights of just being like, man, I don't know. Like, I don't even think like life is like worth like going on. Like, I was like, this just feels like it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
It felt like I was never going to get back to that. I was never going to get back to that moment. And, you know, I think for me, Alberta gave me a second chance, because I wrote a song. I wrote 16 Sticks, which was the Humble Broncos tribute.
Oh, okay.
And that song got heard by a bar owner out here in Edmonton, and he found me and like emailed me. It took me 5 days to get back to him, because like I had zero trust in the music industry, or like I was just so lost.
Yeah.
It took me 5 days, and he's like, hey, I heard your song. Can I fly you out to Edmonton to play this song at a fundraiser?
Way. That's awesome.
And I went out for a week, and I met people from Alberta, and I just felt like when I talked about like the pandemic and I talked about COVID, it was still present, but the conversation was different.
Yeah.
Like people had hope. Like people had hope in their voice. It wasn't like, oh, and like in Ontario, it was just like, yeah, we'll just stay inside and just keep following the rules, and one day it'll go away. And I was like, but Alberta was like, oh, it's going away.
Yeah.
It's leaving. Like we're making a stand. We're done with this. And I'm just like, yes, these are my people.
That's awesome.
And I went back to Ontario, and as I was flying into Pearson, I was like, nope, Ontario's not where I'm meant to be anymore.
Yeah.
And I just texted him. I was like, hey, if I fly back out west, do you think I could get like a job? Like, I'll come play at your bar. I'll bartend. He's like, 100%. When do you want to come? And I'm like, 2 weeks. And he's like, perfect. And I
Nice.
moved out west with a bag and my guitar, and I lived up in St. Albert for 3 months.
Yeah.
Came down here to Calgary, lived here for a year, and then came out to Strathmore last August.
Crazy. What brought you to Strathmore?
I was at an event. There was an event ranch just up the street, and I got brought out there, and I was living on the property, and I was going to start putting on events out there, and it kind of moved me out there. And then the job didn't pan out, and I was like, you know, I moved my stuff out from Calgary. Like, why not stay? And I started actually attending Hope Church.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I remember walking into that church and just feeling this warmth, like feeling this community. And I got introduced by Chuck Bailey, and you know, Chuck's an older gentleman. He walked up, shook my hand firm, and said, "Hey, welcome to Hope." And like, I just started like meeting people and really kind of like this sense of community. And I was like, it's something that I've never felt. Like, I always felt like my hometown never had that warmth. Living in Nashville, it was just like you always had to be on.
Yeah.
And then just other places I've lived, and I just came here to this small town. I was like, there's something different about this town that just kind of like it reels you in. Yeah. And it makes you feel safe, and it makes you feel just like you're part of the community. And like, now I'm just like, I love it.
That's awesome.
I love Strathmore and kind of what it's done for me. And it's
good.
yeah, it's where I found God. Like it's where I found like kind of who I am now. So
Awesome.
yeah. But so Strathmore, like, yeah, no, I love how this went in a different direction, because like I think like that's what I love about the podcast, that like you never know where it's gonna go, and like, you know, hearing about your, you know, sobriety and hearing about God and that kind of stuff. Like, what do you think is next for you? Obviously, you know, you may not know everything, but what do you feel you want to do next with your music?
I just want to start playing out a little bit more. Just take step by step, and doors will open, doors will close, and I'll just go through whichever.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of. It was funny because I heard this thing the other day. It says, if you want God to open and close doors for you, then you better take your hand off the door handle.
Wow.
So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm like wide open. It's like, God, if you open a door, then I'll step through it. And if you close it, I won't try to go through it, because I've done that before and it hasn't worked out so well for me. So
I love that.
yeah.
I think, going back to a quote that I heard, it was like saying like, be so confident in God's plan that if something doesn't work out, it doesn't even bother you. Like, imagine being that trustful and having that much faith that you can just be like, you put so much trust in his plan that if something doesn't work out, you're just like, and every Christian that I always feel that has very strong faith is like that. It's like nothing phases them.
Yeah.
And it always, like, growing up, it bothered me. I was just like, why are you so calm?
Yeah.
Like, you just lost your job. You're like, you have no idea what you're doing in your life. And you're like, I don't know. God's got me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't stand Christians that they're too relaxed.
Just irritating.
They're too relaxed. I'm just like, they have a cheat code. And now, like, being on this side, I'm just like, yeah, it is a totally different thing just to, like, yeah, be okay with it. Be okay with, like, I wish I had, but I know it wasn't time, but like, I just wish, I think back and I'm just like, all the tribulances and all the trial and the fires, and it's just like, oh my God, you couldn't help me back then. You couldn't pull me back through there. But yeah.
Now you know it was all for a reason, right?
Mm-hmm. And what do you think? So yeah, playing shows, and what do you think this town needs? Like, what do you feel like Strathmore? Like, I feel there is a certain energy, like people are really wanting live music here. I think I think this town's building, it's growing, and I think more and more people, like more and more venues are wanting to do music, and there's a lot of like great people that are just trying to start things, and like Max over at the Music Man, and Dan, and he's putting on a free concert on August 18th outside like Rock the Park. Have you been in touch with him about that?
Not yet, no.
Yeah. So
I heard he's got quite a few acts, so that's exciting.
He's got seven, and I think he's looking.
Are you
for
one
more.
of them? Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to perform on the 18th, and then
sweet.
So yeah, I think it's just like giving people live music and playing more, and that's what just playing music and sharing your music and sharing our gift and what we have to offer, and God, it's an amazing feeling.
That's one of the things, like you said, gift. It's like that can be kind of intimidating sometimes, because you have something to offer, and for people that struggle with mental health and low self-esteem and stuff like that, it's like everybody has something to offer, and I think if we can be the kind of people that, even though we're scared, we step out, then it can inspire other people, to take those steps and just give what they have to offer.
Absolutely. And I think, like, as a creative, I think a lot of people have that creative. If they don't have that creative outlet, it's just like, it's putting out a song that helps people relate to where they are, and maybe they didn't have the ability to do that, but that's what I think is the power of music. I think that is what music can do. Is music can be the words that someone else can't speak, and it's like, it is like a window. And I think, like, having that ability to do that, I think is like something I've taken for granted. But I'm so happy that you came on and we got to talk about
this is awesome.
all cool things and God and sobriety and how can people find you and kind of tell them about what's coming next and maybe there's some new music maybe coming out.
Yeah. I don't know. I've been kind of quiet. So I don't really have a way for people to get a hold of me yet. I think like word of mouth and just meeting people, that's my major thing. It's like, I just want to be one-on-one, so like this, how this happened was so cool, we know the same dude. So, and Carla, and that's so awesome. So I don't really, like I still have music on like YouTube and Spotify and Apple Music, and it's under Sugar Richards, which was my stage name that I had before. But throughout this whole season, like I decided to have a stage name because, well, when I was a kid, Sugar was my nickname. One of my friends' dads gave me that nickname, and so I thought, well, if I get famous, then maybe having a stage name would be like a good thing. And it worked for a while, but then I was like, I just want to be me, and Sarah is my name and that means princess and that's cool. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to be Sarah now. So yeah.
That's awesome. I think it's just shedding kind of like, and I think obviously without the drinking, I think you almost just like, this is me now.
Yeah.
Like you're not putting on this, like you're not putting on this stage, you're not putting on this show anymore. It's just like, it's like take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, I'm just knocking off everything. And I'm like, this is me at the core. And I think that doesn't need a stage name.
No.
I think it's just like, this is me, like Sarah Richards, like we're just going to write vulnerable music and we're going to put it out and we're just going to see where it takes us. And
I feel like it was like I was trying to be cooler, than people, like not like I want to be cooler than other people, but like, oh, I have this cool stage name.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you're fine just the way you are. You don't have to change who you are to be somebody, so that's kind of how I feel too.
That's awesome. And what would you like people to take away from this this episode? And like what's something you want people to take away from anything you've talked about? Could be about sobriety, could be about God.
Just about trusting the season that you're in, because that was the hardest thing for me, was to just trust that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and just letting God lead me through that, just step by step. It's like his word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path. So as we take steps, he shines the light. And so we're able to maybe not see really far ahead, so we don't know what's actually happening in the future, but he does, and he knows that the things that he has for us is good. So if we're able to just step by step and just trust him in even the hard times, and the times where we're being refined and going through things, then I think that's just my little bit of encouragement, I guess, through what I've been going through.
That's awesome. Well, yes, thank you so much for coming on. And this was an amazing podcast, and I think I learned a lot about yourself, and I definitely think you gave a lot of insight into something that I feel like I was feeling about music and that kind of stuff. So appreciate you coming on, taking the time, and
no problem.
Can't wait for this to air, and hopefully do a show together in Strathmore soon.
That would be awesome.
Let's make it happen.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Thank you.